All right, I have 7 o'clock.
Same here. I would like to welcome you all to the Thursday, February 25th, 2021 Bellingham Planning Board meeting. Jim, can you just go over the reason we're having it via Zoom?
Absolutely. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order superseding or suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting will be via the Zoom online option. All information and instructions are at the end of the agenda.
Thank you very much. What I'd like to do is, it appears the first item this evening is to continue public hearing for Red Mill on the Charles. That would probably take up a significant portion of our meeting. So unless anyone objects, I'd like to flip the agenda so we can have the continued public hearing for 0 South Maple Street. And if you could bring us up to speed.
Absolutely.
And prior to that, I believe Mr. O'Connell is going to speak on behalf of the applicant. Just to clarify, there's no relationship between myself and Mr. O'Connell that I'm aware of.
All right, excellent. So yes, so 0 South Maple Street. At the last meeting, there were just a couple of items that the board had requested the applicant make updates to the plan set on. Therefore, the board did not close the hearing just yet. However, they did ask for, or the board has asked for draft decisions to be written, and those are provided to you in your package this evening. I know Mr. O'Connell has also provided an updated plan set with the items requested. I don't know if you'd like for Mr. O'Connell to do just a quick run through of that plan.
That would be fine.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Steve O'Connell on behalf of the applicant. I've got some video difficulties, so just hopefully the audio will suffice. The two items that are illustrated on the revised plans are the addition of the fire hydrant in the site driveway. Therefore, if the fire department needs access to a hydrant, they don't have to run hose across the South Maple Street, and then they do not have to drive far into the existing site to access the hydrant. So we added a hydrant at the existing site driveway adjacent to the proposed building. And then we added some additional landscaping on the street side of the loading platform. So that would be screened from the street as well. All the prior landscaping plan showed screening along the boundary line proximate to the Maplebrook condominiums. So we, in consultation with Jim, we thought that was a little extra landscaping would be beneficial. So we went ahead and did that. Jim did provide me and my client with draft decisions, which we have reviewed, and feedback to Jim was positive. We had no comments. We're happy to discuss them to the extent the board would like, or anything else for that matter. So thank you very much.
Jim, can you bring us up to speed on steps in this process?
I'm sorry, on the process?
Yes, we need to review these documents and make a motion once we've had an opportunity to review.
Correct. Yeah, so before we do that, however, if the board does agree that they've exhausted their review, you may close the hearing at this point, and then I would recommend reviewing the decision there after that.
Before I do that, is there anyone from the public that has any input?
No one from the public is currently in attendance.
Okay. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question before we do
Certainly.
that? My memory has in it a 8-foot slab next to the side of the building. Was that resolved?
Yeah, I can touch on that. So I did. Yeah. So I spoke with the building inspector regarding that, and it's egress from the site. So therefore, it doesn't conflict with the setback regulations. I thought that might be the case, but I didn't want to speak for him at the time. So I followed up with him the following day, and that's what he told me to share with you all.
I appreciate that, Jim. Thank you.
Brian, any questions?
No questions.
Liz?
No questions.
Dennis?
No questions.
I would entertain a motion on the 0 South Maple Street Industrial Building Development Plan Approval and Stormwater Management Special Permit Decision. I'm sorry, I need to go back technically. We didn't technically vote to close the public hearing, correct?
Correct.
All in favor of closing the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Well, why don't I'll just to make it official, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, thank you. All in favor, please, in favor of closing the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, that motion passes unanimously. Now I'd like, we would need a motion for 0 South Maple Street Industrial Building Development Plan Approval and Stormwater Management Permit Decision. It's a favorable decision.
So I will note I did have I received one comment that's different from what the draft you have. So if you'd like, I could just quickly go over that one.
That'd be appreciated.
Yep. So in the development plan approval and stormwater management permit, condition number 19. So the discussion is all along has been that, you know, this is a rather benign tenant, and so therefore, you know, there's not a lot of impacts. However, you know, that could change over time. So in number 19, offer the language of any change of use or increase of intensity of the permitted use may require a public hearing to either modify the existing permit or to issue a new permit. And so basically how that would play out is if, you know, another tenant comes in and they are significantly more intrusive to the area, the planning board can haul them in for, or the building inspector could haul them in and say, you got to go before the board for an amendment to this decision.
I think that's very sound. Any other comments? We have
Just one quick question, Bill. I'm sorry. Jim, the town council signed off on?
Yes, yeah, town councils review both of these.
Okay.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. All in favor of the motion on the floor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. I would like to entertain a motion on 0 South Maple Street, industrial building, flexible parking special permit decision. That's a favorable decision.
So I'll move that question. Just have a question once we get there. So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor. It has been seconded to approve the 0 South Maple Street industrial building flexible parking permit. On discussion. Brian, you have a question?
Yeah. So Jim, is there any, with that revision to the other permit, is there any synergies that need to be incorporated into the other?
Right, I was looking at that. I don't think so. It's specific to the properties together for reduced parking. If in fact, you know, there's an amendment to the permit and it is an intensity of use issue and additional parking is necessary, I think it's captured under the first one.
Okay. I have no other questions.
There's a motion on the floor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Again, that motion passes unanimously. Jim, what is the next step?
So if we could, if everyone's available tomorrow at any point in the morning, that would be huge. If we could get 4 signatures, I could get this wrapped up into the town clerk, ideally tomorrow, if everyone's available.
All right. I will try to get down there before noon time.
What time is the office open?
I should be there by like 8:15, 8:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, what time do you close?
Well, I have a meeting at noon, but I think everyone has my work number, which goes to my cell phone. I can, if you need to get there like 1 or 2 or whatever, just let me know.
And what time does it need to be to Larry by the end of the day?
Well, he leaves at 1, but as long as I can get into his office by Friday or by tomorrow. That would be ideal. That gets the ball rolling.
Okay. And that starts the 30 days, is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We
You
appreciate
made
it.
the
Look
process
forward-
very easy.
As did you. Thank you.
We appreciate everything you've done for us and the changes you've made.
Thanks again. Good night.
Thank you.
Right.
Jim, I'd like to move on to continue public hearing on Red Mill on the Charles. I noticed we have the applicant here and some people representing him. Can you bring us up to speed on what is going on with that?
Sure. So at the last meeting, we got into a lot of good detail. At this meeting, if the board recalls, this was actually going to be our conversation regarding earth removal. However, with some updates from the Conservation Commission, the plans have changed somewhat. And so I believe the applicant is looking for a little further guidance before moving forward with the earth removal. So actually in your package, there's quite a bit of updated information. We have an updated road layout. You have an exhibit regarding tree layout, lighting, and sidewalks. And what else we got? Oh, and a second basin that's actually kind of a larger update that's very much favorable for the town there. But I won't spoil the surprises. I'll let the applicant go over those with you.
Can we turn it over to the applicants so they can review those with us?
Yeah, that would be good. I will note though too that our peer review has provided updates. He's not here tonight because I thought tonight would be more of a back and forth between the board, but he'll certainly be can return at the next meeting for further guidance once we get that updated plan set.
Okay.
So good evening, Mark Allen with Allen Engineering Associates. Just to bring you up to speed, as Jim mentioned, we've had some good back and forth with the Conservation Commission, and we've basically landed on a final site layout, which we're going to present to you tonight. But we wanted to present this to you in addition to the previous items that you wanted, which was the street trees, the sidewalks, so that we can discuss that as well. And our intentions are to put all of these items in a final design plan that Frank can review and can come back and hopefully wrap this up with one more plan revision. I know Mike Dryden in our office has been working diligently on all of these exhibits that are before you tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to him to kind of walk you through what we've been supplying to Jim over the last few weeks.
Thank you, Mark. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, sounds good.
Absolutely.
Great. So as was mentioned, there were a few items that were discussed back on January 14th. I think it makes a lot of sense to update the board on some changes that have resulted as a result of the Concom's ongoing review. And I don't want to get too far into the weeds or too technical, but I think it is important for the board to understand one of the major changes that we're going to make, and it's associated with the riverfront area. We do have an unnamed perennial stream that runs through the center of the site. And to date, we have taken an approach from the Wetlands Protection Act that allows you to disturb or utilize what's already degraded riverfront area. And as you know, this was a previous gravel borrow operation, so much of the site is disturbed, extensively actually. So we were proposing to alter roughly 13.5% of the riverfront area that's on the site. And again, that took credit for what was previously degraded. It's been sort of a contentious issue, if you will, with the commission. And again, not to get too far into the detail, but what we were up against was proving that these, quote, degraded areas were completely devoid of topsoil, which is what defines them as degraded. So that was going to take some time, some field investigation. While we were having these discussions, we got 1.5 feet of snow. So we were looking at some significant delays in trying to take that route. So what we have done in order to streamline the commission's review and really simplify that review and make the riverfront aspect of the project much simpler is to back off and utilize the 10% provision in the Wetlands Protection Act. And what that does is it allows you to alter up to 10% of the overall riverfront area. So again, previously we were proposing to alter about 13.5%. Now we're forced to back off and go to 10%. So Jim, if you do have those two exhibits handy, I'd like to start with the Road D, the current alignment of Road D.
So you have the ability to share screen if you like. That's probably
okay,
easier.
I will do that. Okay, let me do that. Can everyone see that? Great.
Yep.
So this is Road D, Road A at the bottom. This is the through road, and then Road D kind of loops back on itself. I'm calling it sort of the U shape, if you will. And the riverfront area, a little bit difficult to see, but it's right through here. This light line is the 200-foot riverfront area. And all of this work that's inbound of that area, this was really sort of, for lack of a better word, the biggest violator, or where the biggest chunk of that riverfront work was occurring. So we had to find a solution, a modification to the project to remove a significant amount of that riverfront alteration. So I'm going to go, I shouldn't have jumped out, just give me a moment.
Take your time.
Can't seem to get to the other one, just bear with me.
Certainly.
Okay. I didn't have them all loaded up. So the next one is the change. So you'll recall, I just showed you that U shape had two intersections with Road A, looped on itself. You can see that we've removed all of that work inside of this riverfront area. And now the result is Road D has a single intersection point with Road A, and now it's sort of a lollipop shape, if you will. It loops back on itself. What that allowed us to do is to remove, again, a significant portion of work in the riverfront. That brought us down to 10%, again, which is a much easier and more palatable plan for the commission to accept. But it has resulted in a few other things. This previously was the area of the parkland, and beneath that parkland was a subsurface detention area. And in having back and forth with Jim, now that the park area would be sort of behind these lots, if you will, Jim had indicated to us that that was likely not a great scenario, a park behind residential units. So what we're showing now is an open basin. Again, previously it was in this location, it was subsurface. It allowed a park area to be above. Now we're showing an open basin that's much farther away from the resource areas. Another change is obviously the loss of some lots here. So you can imagine that as a result of losing about 300 feet of roadway and its associated frontage, we did lose a net, the net loss was 3 single-family lots, because we did gain a few back where the second intersection of Road D intersected with Road A in this location. So again, a net loss of 3 single-family lots. So that's a fairly significant change. And the other thing that it does trigger is another waiver. We had previously 5 waivers, 4 of which were voted on during the last meeting. And I assume we'll circle back to that list of waivers. But the new waiver that is triggered here is the number of units that are served by a dead-end road. Your regulations limit that to 12. And this actually is a total of 33 units that will be serviced by this loop road, or this lollipop shape, if you will. So that is now waiver 6. Any questions before I move on about that change?
I have none.
Okay, great. So I mentioned that we did lose 3 single-family units, and what Mr. Loberser would like to do to offset the loss of those units, I'm going to call up another exhibit. This is Road A, and the Lincoln property site is here, Mechanic Street, just off the page to the bottom. This was an area that was previously open space A2. It was about 2.6 acres. So to offset the loss of the 3 single-family units, Mr. Loberser would like to add a total of 9 townhomes. So that would be 3 triplexes that you see here. So the obvious question is, what does that do to the open space, since a portion of open space A2 will be lost? The change that I described previously at Road D actually resulted in some additional open space. So it's not quite a wash, but we do still have about 44.5% of the site preserved as open space in perpetuity. We were previously at about 46. So still far above the minimum requirement of 40%. The next thing I wanted to show you that Jim had mentioned briefly was the addition of a second stormwater basin on town property. So the town hall is here. This is Common Street and the new connector road to Mill Street that we are proposing. Previously, there was a single basin in this location. And again, as requested by the Conservation Commission, they asked us to provide some additional topographic survey in this area and see if that area would accommodate another basin. So we have done that. And as you can see here, the area does lend itself to a second basin. And what this does is allow a significantly greater off-site drainage area to be mitigated on site. So previously, this basin was mitigating portions of Town Hall property, as well as a small section of Mechanic Street. And Mark, chime in at any moment to add anything or correct me. But this second basin allows a significantly greater portion of South Main Street, almost up to the water tower, I believe. That
Correct.
Entire section of South Main Street can now be mitigated, and that goes a long way to help the town with their MS4 requirements.
Yeah,
So
exactly
we
right,
showed
Michael.
this to the commission.
The town asked us to look into the CHA design as they're widening that stretch of Route 140, and the state has asked them to look into collecting more stormwater runoff from existing catch basins. And with the one basin, we could only handle about 30% of the town's request, and then with the second basin, we were able to capture 100% of what the town was asking us for. So it basically added about another 8 acres of impervious area to be treated, and the town can be credited with treating stormwater under the MS4 requirements.
Thanks, Mark. The next item I have on my list is the street trees that we discussed at the last meeting, and an exhibit was requested. So what we have done here is we're showing the sidewalk alignment, the street trees, as well as the current location of light poles. And we took a very close look at this, and it may be difficult for you to see at this scale, but I'm going to just sort of trace with my cursor the sidewalk, which starts on the south side of Mill Street. it crosses the road in this location, and then along Road A. And then previously, it had crossed again in this location on Road A, and then finished on the south side of Road A. The board had asked us to see if we could eliminate the crossings entirely and have the sidewalk be entirely on one side or the other of Road A. Unfortunately, we don't think that that makes a lot of sense. But what we have done is we've moved the crossing, and this again was through some discussion with Jim, the crossing that was previously here, we moved that to this location. And we purposely put it on this sort of curve here on the outside of the curve so that that crossing point would provide maximum sight distance for pedestrians crossing. We have also moved this boulevard island that you see right here down to this location just beyond the Lincoln property driveway. So now essentially what we have is a boulevard entry here and here to sort of bookend the project site, if you will, and sort of create a sense of arrival. We've widened up the pavement to 38 feet to accommodate that 6-foot wide boulevard. And again, so we have a crossing here and a crossing here. We believe that's the simplest sidewalk alignment and the safest sidewalk alignment for the project. Any questions relative to the sidewalk alignment?
No, I think that's a big improvement.
Okay, great. We agree. Again, the
I think
street
others will
trees are
speak as
shown.
well.
I'm sorry?
I'm sure the other board members will have something to say about that.
Happy to answer questions now or just keep going until the end, however you'd like to handle that, Mr. Chairman.
Why don't we keep going, sir?
Okay. So the red dots that you see are the trees, and you see there's a blow up here. It is one of the waivers, as you'll recall. The tree spacing required is 40 feet, and I believe the board did vote on that waiver last time. But this diagram just shows wherever it's possible to provide that 40 feet of spacing, we are doing so. In most other areas, it doesn't make sense because of the location of driveways, utilities, transformer pads, etc. So this gives you sort of an overview of the number of street trees that we're providing. There are some areas on the site, I'll use this one right here for an example, where there's significant wooded areas immediately adjacent to the road. So you'll note that we're not showing street trees there. What tends to happen in those scenarios is the street trees sort of get overtaken, if you will, by the existing vegetation. So wherever there's an opportunity to utilize that existing vegetation, we're doing so. And then finally, we added lighting detail to this exhibit. This is the light pole and fixture detail that we're currently proposing. It's a 10-foot mounting height. It's an LED fixture. It's clearly a sort of a pedestrian scale, almost more of a decorative fixture than a Cobra head type fixture, which we certainly wouldn't like to see utilized here. So these symbols that you see, the black circles with the larger dash circle, those represent the lighting locations. And that spacing is approximately 200 to 250 feet along Road A, and then more sparsely along Road B, C, and D. You'll note that we provide lighting at intersections and then at select areas where there's curvature in the roadways. But as we discussed at the last hearing, each one of these homes will have ambient light, lamp posts. I think the board agreed that we did not want to have excessive lighting along the roadway. We think this is sort of a good balance, if you will. And then finally, I just wanted to jump back to the list of waivers. I'll keep this graphic up. Again, we had 5 waivers initially. The board voted on 4 of the 5 waivers at the last meeting. That leaves waiver request number 1, and then the new waiver request number 6 that I mentioned previously. To touch back on waiver number 1, that waiver was related to the slope of the detention basin off grading. We did have one basin on the town property that had a 2-to-1 slope. I'll jump back to that. This this graphic actually still shows it as a 2-to-1 slope. We were able to eliminate that 2-to-1 slope, and it's in part because of this new basin and sort of separating the flows. We shrunk this basin a little bit. So the waiver still applies because technically the waiver, or the regulations, excuse me, require 4-to-1 slopes. We were requesting a waiver for 3-to-1 throughout, with the exception of this one area at 2-to-1. So now that this area is gone, the waiver is requesting 3-to-1 slopes throughout. And then again, finally, waiver number 6 is to request relief to allow 33 units to be served by the dead-end road. That's all I have at this time. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I'll start with Brian.
Can you hear me? So I have a bunch of questions, which I think any one of them might lead to discussion, but if you can come back to me, Bill, at the end of that topic, I would appreciate it. So one question I had was the open basin versus the underground basin, where the park area would have gone. And is it possible, or what's the thinking regarding an open basin versus an underground basin?
Yeah, through discussions with Don DiMartino, his preference would be to maintain the open air basins. He's indicated that the subsurface basins are more difficult to maintain, and when their life expectancy comes up, it's a lot larger of an expense to replace. So he's expressed that the open air basins are the DPW's preferred style of basin.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think, so we asked for the subsurface at the Macy School because of the proximity to the recreational area.
Correct.
And even then, honestly, Don DiMartino was not overly excited about it, but I think he agreed that it was a better option there.
So is there any, I mean, these are pretty close to residential lots. Is there, I'm just thinking two things, just really just the aesthetics of having a basin. And I guess that would really be, would that be visible from the street?
The basin wouldn't be visible from the street. You'd have the single family homes they're surrounding the basin in front of it. And what the town does require for safety, I thought you were going to go with the safety. We do require, or the town does require the basin to be fenced. But we are in discussions with Concom to maybe do a 3-sided fence, so as to leave the corridor closest to the wetland area open and sort of shore up the safety around the other 3 sides of the basin.
So there would be an access way to the basin through the.
Correct.
Correct. That's here.
Is there a way to wherever it's possible to screen if there's a sight line into that basin?
Well, there's certainly no, there's no sight line from the roadways. Is that your question, Brian?
Yeah, I just don't want, I would hate to see a basin next to these nice houses like that, and.
And that's certainly understood, but if there are several other basins across the site, and we obviously try to locate them as far away from the dwellings as possible, but as you can understand, it's elevation driven for the most part. So we find a low point, and really that's where stormwater has to be directed. So there are several other areas, and it's fairly common to have basins in close proximity to residential dwellings. In this particular case, the only thing you would perceive from the road is the access point here, which is a 10-foot wide grass or gravel access point. Other than that, the basin would be, again, behind the residential units.
Okay. So my next question would be maybe more for Jim. For the purpose of the bylaw of the dead end 12 homes versus 30, what's the sort of the intention of that bylaw?
Right. So yeah, for subdivisions, the intention is that It's an emergency access if anything were to come about. The board has certainly granted waivers in the past, but always has looked for, some opportunities if they come up to help service getting us a secondary access. I've presented this to the deputy fire chief, and he didn't seem to have any concerns really with the layout that's there now.
But do you have any idea what the Y12 is better than 30? Is it just the length, or?
I believe actually that stems from the state standards, and that's kind of a standard across the board for many towns that have adopted it in their subdivision regs. It's I believe Franklin has the same thing. Some go with the length of frontage, so I think like the 1,000 feet of frontage perhaps in some communities. But I don't think there's really any rhyme or reason to that exact number.
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
And Jim, a lot of the towns were proposed with public water systems. It was usually a dead-end hydrant, didn't have enough water pressure to supply more than 12 homes if it were a dead end. But this system is looped and will not have any of those water pressure issues. So that usually drove the Massachusetts towns to sort of limit the number of houses that might have low pressure.
Okay, I knew there must have been something to it. Just to touch on the loss of that park area and then sort of the making up of the 3 triplexes. To me, I hate to see the loss of that park area. As we've talked quite a bit about creating a neighborhood with character and unique features and things like that. And I think you guys have done a good job really working with us to try to accomplish that. So the loss of that park is, it's kind of disappointing, but I wouldn't want to see the loss of the park compounded with 3 triplexes where in the other open space area. That to me, the townhouse feature of this project is, I'm sure they are going to be very nice once constructed, but we have a ton of townhouses in town, and maybe there's a discussion to be had about single family homes in that area, but I would hate to lose open space and park area. And I realize it's might be a loss in quantity, but perhaps a bigger loss in quality of that open space. So I don't know if you wanted to discuss if there's some magic to the 9 or the 3 triplexes.
Yeah. So and Michael,
Can you check for a minute, sir? I think we all may have some questions on that. So can we circle back?
Yeah, that's fine.
Remember to say about that? So you're not repeating yourself all night.
All right, and so then just a couple more questions. So thank you for revising the sidewalk and reducing the number of crossings. I'm curious down towards on 140, why the sidewalk would need to cross there versus just sort of maintaining it down over that driveway access point?
That's a good question. As you know, this is the driveway of Lincoln property, so there will be significant truck traffic utilizing or making this movement. So we'd like to separate the pedestrians from that. This would be a relatively wide crossing here, and again, in direct conflict with truck traffic. So it's really a safety issue to keep pedestrians away from that truck traffic.
So, but if I was coming from, let's say I was on Mechanic Street and I took a right onto the road, road A, and I'm walking along, I would have to cross that road to get on the sidewalk. I missed the driveway, and I'm not very good with directions. So if you were walking along Mechanic Street towards the center of town, so the development would be on your right, and you turn right to go onto Road A, there would be no sidewalk there. You would have to cross that road, which includes the trucks coming out and also the traffic of the subdivision to get to the sidewalk. Then you would miss the driveway, and then you would cross over through the traffic. To me, it makes sense just to have the sidewalk continue to the end. You cross the driveway, but you're not crossing the driveway and the road. And I can't imagine that the stream of trucks coming out of that driveway is that much of a safety concern. Because I'd rather, we talked about this at length at the last meeting, the people that need to walk, that are pushing baby carriages, that have a problem seeing, the people that can't drive, those are the people that really we have to think about with sidewalks. And I just don't think making them cross the driveway that includes the trucks to cross at a different place. And I appreciate there's no good answers. The only other good answer would be to put sidewalks on both sides of the street. And that's just more impervious surface. So I get it. But I would like to see, and I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate your efforts, to see that sidewalk continue all the way down.
And to that end, Brian, as you know, Mechanic Street has a sidewalk on the north side. So as if you're entering, as you're coming from 495 to the center of town, Mass Highway has already approved that crossing along the north side of Mechanic Street. They did not require two sidewalks. So we were kind of handcuffed as to where our connection point was going to be. The only point that was approved by Mass Highway through the Lincoln Development Project was on that westerly side of Road A. So we only had one side to connect to, and that's why we chose to make that design choice.
So then could the sidewalk flip over to the other side?
If I could, Mark, and Brian, thank you for your thoughts on this. I guess my train of thought here was that as I was listening to your explanation, you're suggesting that people coming this way would have to cross here and then get on the sidewalk. Conversely, people headed this way, if the sidewalk were moved here, people would have to cross here and here. So I think really this is the lesser of two evils in terms of conflicts with truck traffic and pedestrians.
Mark, what are we talking about? 100 linear feet of sidewalk?
More like probably 150, 200.
Well, it's the same amount, regardless of what side.
I think Kevin would put 200 linear feet of sidewalk there, both sides.
Mark, are there any conflicts with the detention basin that's here? I know that you're more familiar with that than I am.
Yeah, there are a lot. There's a lot of utilities and drainage in that area. Yeah, we'd have to definitely double check with that.
If you could look at that again, I would appreciate that.
Are you suggesting sidewalks on both sides there?
I'm just, I'm happy to consider any.
No, my question was to Jim.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it works, if Mark can make it work, I think it puts the concern to rest. And I hear what Brian's saying in terms of practically speaking. I mean, people coming down from Road A that's going to walk on Mechanic Street, who knows which way they're going to go. But I mean, all the plaza and restaurants and everything like that is going to be going towards Franklin. So, if you're going to the center of town, you're going to be going the other end of Road A, I'm sure. But nevertheless, I mean, I think whatever side we pick, everyone's going to use the opposite. So why don't we put it on both sides there?
Gentlemen, what can we do for signage there?
Yeah, I think right at that driveway, Bill, I think you're right. If sidewalk would go on that side, maybe it's a pedestrian crossing that faces Lincoln, and as we told Lincoln, no trucks going right onto Road A, which I don't know if that sign's up yet on the driveway, but there should be signage there that says no right turns onto, there probably isn't a sign there because if they turn right, they're going to run into a rock wall, but.
Exactly.
Mark, I agree with Jim. I mean, if there's no issue with anything with Lincoln side there, I have no problem with putting the double sidewalk on that entrance.
Okay.
I mean, I do think that I'd like to remember that this particular conversation when I know at the end we're going to talk more about those 9 units. But that's another topic at the end.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Then, so I guess my other question is the street trees. Will there be plantings in addition to the street trees? Will each lot have trees, or are these the only trees that we're going to, where those trees go are the trees that those lots kind of have?
The trees that are shown on this exhibit are the only trees that are part of the public infrastructure, if you will.
Yeah.
But if you're familiar with Kevin's product, he always has additional landscaping on individual lots and individual units. So there certainly will be additional landscape.
Mike, perhaps you could show a detail of a typical plot with, foundation plantings for the board to see.
There might be something in the file, Jim.
Sure.
There may be something as part of the DRDOD. If you recall, we had some images done with standard units for triplexes and single-family homes.
Okay, we can dig up those and take a look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can do it as well and send over PDF images.
One thing I think, Michael, I think you provided conservation perhaps, and maybe not the planning board, was that color rendering of all the contiguous open space there. Because right now, looking at this black and white, I could see where Brian's saying, hey, we're talking about what, 80 trees here? But in reality, there's a lot of green space going on here.
Yeah, the 44% of the 87 acres is going to be completely wooded. So it just didn't represent in that particular exhibit that Michael had up. But yeah, all of that empty white space is existing vegetation.
So
unfortunately, I don't have that exhibit handy, but it is a significant area.
Yeah.
So this land is not stripped of trees?
No.
And vegetation?
We've chosen the active gravel operation that they've had for decades to cluster that development. That was our entire goal at the outset of the overlay district, was to utilize those areas that have already previously been altered through the gravel operations. And that's where this particular exhibit kind of shows the new lollipop for Road D and the Road A, B, and C cluster. That's where the most active stripped area is.
Yes, this area in between is completely wooded surrounding the perennial stream.
And how about the area? Well, I'll wait. Brian, any other questions?
No, that was another question of just, where I know that this site currently looks like a disaster area. And I appreciate that whatever's done will help a lot. But I was curious about where it is in this open space that there would be forested or wooded areas versus just keeping the gravel pit look.
Right. If there are any areas that are outside of this limit of work that are gravel, there's a couple areas that we're enhancing. One is in this location. We're doing some mitigation as requested by the commission. We're going to restore the gravel to a forested area. But if there are other small pockets of gravel that lie just outside of the lots, they will over time revegetate and become reforested. But again, the vast majority is already, the stream channel, the areas adjacent are forested. And then what we have is a few areas here, there's another one here, another here. Those are areas where the forest will be right up to the edge of the new roadway. And that will go a long way to sort of break up the portions of the site that are developed.
Very good. Thank you.
Can I
And-
interject for a moment
Sure.
before I go any further? I think for future meetings, can you have, be able to provide us and the public with an idea of what is vegetated? Pick up on what Jim said. So we have an overlay of the area that is the former gravel pit with no vegetation. The areas where you're gonna put the houses, and the areas that will remain and are currently wooded.
Yeah, we will
Sure.
have that for you next time. We have provided it to the Conservation Commission, so we do already have a working plan, just not here tonight, that's all.
I think that would alleviate a lot of future questions
Mhm.
from the board.
We'll essentially overlay this graphic on the aerial for you.
Yes. Liz?
I did have a few questions, but Brian pretty much stole them all. So he did get all of them pretty much. So I'm good. Thank you.
Phil?
Yeah, I'm pretty good with those questions too. Just from an orientation point of view, Mr. Allen, you remember when we did the site walk?
Mhm.
We were sitting up on the hill looking down at the gravel pit.
Mhm.
Do you remember, could you give me an idea of exactly, I think, yeah, that's right about that area?
Yeah, maybe a little bit further south, Michael. Yeah, right
Right in
about in
here.
there. Yep.
Okay, that helps. That helps the orientation, but yeah, no, I'm appreciative of the sidewalk conversation that Brian led, and you know, the dead end loop, you know, with the fire department weighing in, I'm okay with that. I guess I would want to move on. So next.
Dennis?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the improvements. I kind of like those. And Brian kind of did steal everything. But Mechanic Street with the entryway there when you go into Lincoln Properties, aren't we gonna have a street light there anyways with a pedestrian light eventually?
Yes, yeah, so that's the goal, is there would certainly be right now, I believe the agreement is a flashing beacon, and eventually a full signalized intersection.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, Jim, while we have the flashing beacon, we'll still have a detail, correct?
That's correct, yeah, police details there until it's fully signalized.
So that will help, mitigate some of the traffic. As everyone has said, we usually call on Brian first because he addresses a lot of the issues we have. And
Then I have a big mouth.
I want to talk about safety for the open basin. How can we reduce that exposure as best we can?
So
Oh.
there are 8 basins on the property, if you recall. This is one of the 8. It's just the one that we had underground because it abutted the extension of Road D. Now with the elimination of any frontage, it makes a lot more sense to do the open air basins similar to, if Michael can kind of pan around to the other locations of the basins. There's one there, there's one here, there's one there behind units, there's one here, and there's one there, that's the newest one here, one there, and then one more there. Yep.
What is the depth of these basins potentially?
They're all open air basins. They're all proposed to have the fencing around them. In recent discussions, just the basins that are associated with the perennial stream, the commission asked that the fencing be 3-sided as opposed to 4-sided. So it basically would be 4 of the 8 basins would be 3-sided fenced, and then the other 4 would be fully fenced.
Okay. And then I think my question may be answered when we get the overview of what it looks like right now. But a lot of these residents are going to have vegetation still in their backyard, correct?
Absolutely.
They're
Absolutely.
actually looking, I don't want the perception out there that they're looking at gravel pits.
Yeah, definitely.
In fact, The vast majority, almost every lot will abut a forested area.
Okay. I think you have deceived.
I shouldn't say every, with the exception of the interior lots, the ones on the perimeter.
Okay, that improves my comfort level. One thing we haven't discussed in a lot of detail is sidewalks. We talked about where they're going to go. Jim, what is the requirement that we're looking at?
Right, so you're referring to the curbing?
Yes, sir.
Right, so I have had some conversations with the applicant's team about curbing. Right now, I believe it's proposed to be asphalt berm. And the request was to look at slope granite. And in that discussion with the applicant, I had offered perhaps maybe a compromise that could work for both parties and really look at the slope granite at the strategic location. So the welcoming point again, where the subdivision is entered at either end, and then also at where the road meets Road A. So each one of those, where the curves are, and the reason for that is it's strategic. It's for when our guys are plowing. That's the key spots that get hit every time. Those curves, and when they hit the curves on the asphalt berm, it just pulls out the chunk and it rolls down the hill. But with the slope granite, it will protect it longer. So I think that's a good compromise. I don't know what the board thinks, but I think it will achieve a really nice aesthetic for entering, and it will also help retain that curbing longer.
But it also relieves some responsibility for the developer, correct?
Right. So slope granite's obviously much more expensive. So, and I recognize it's a long road there that is going to have to be constructed. So it definitely does relieve the applicant from a pretty large expense, but I think it's a good compromise.
I want to talk about the potential loss of the recreation area. Actually, that was one of the concerns we had of making it very livable. As it turned out, the recreational area ended up being behind residents, correct?
With the current proposal, this is the previous layout of Road D with two intersections, and this is the location of the subsurface basin with the park above it.
Okay. So
And with the current layout,
correct?
open up for me. With the current layout, it would be an open basin behind the units.
Okay. And we're losing the recreation area entirely, correct?
Yeah, there wouldn't be any road frontage, Mr. Chairman, so it didn't make much sense to have a recreation space that didn't have frontage associated with it, maybe a little parking spot or a pullover spot. So with the elimination of the roadway, we felt that the town would be more amenable through DPW to maintain an open air basin in that location as opposed to keeping it subsurface.
Okay. And based on that decision, that's why we're losing the recreation area per se.
Yeah, that road access has been eliminated for the reduction of riverfront area alteration.
Okay. The recreation area is a concern. Ideally, I would like to have it on the site, but I realize that may not be feasible. Is there any way if we, Brian, your concern is losing it entirely, correct?
Yeah, to the extent that the neighborhood loses its.
Well, right now, it's not viable with the open basin, which is something that wasn't our decision. It was reached by another board, correct?
In essence,
That's
yes.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that board was,
The
Conservation.
Conservation Commission.
okay, and the DPW has bought off on that.
Yes.
Is it possible, I'm throwing out there, that we could talk amongst ourselves in town about a one-time donation to improve recreational sites throughout the town? Is that a discussion point we might want to talk about?
Yeah, I think Kevin may have some input on that. I think based on the town's current recommendation, or not recommendation, the town's current playground situation, if there are parks, i.e. Macy Estates, if they, have equipment that needs to be fixed or replaced, that could be talked about.
Again, I don't think we can have the open air basin and still have recreation,
Correct.
because it would be, in essence, be behind people's houses, correct?
Correct.
And then you're doing
That's
it
right.
right away from people's houses,
Correct.
recreation area. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian, what's your feeling on that?
So I certainly appreciate the pains and efforts that the applicant has gone to work very collaboratively with the town, and they added a basin, and the other basin was a good thing to begin with. So and Kevin has always been a very good partner, and I appreciate everything. But it would be nice to have something there. I understand it can't be, and if we can make some other part of town or some other park improve it, I think that would be a great thing for the town. But I understand that we ask a lot, and he has given a lot as well.
So I think that's something we may want to discuss. I'd like to have some of the other board members chime in on that. And then I think the elephant in the room right now is the adding of the triplexes. Kevin, can you explain from I know it's a business standpoint, the rationale for what you want to do here? And before you do that, I have one question. Where do you want to put the 3 new triplexes, which will be a total of how many? 9 units?
Correct.
What was back there before? In your opinions? Anything?
If you could imagine, Mr. Chairman, that area that Michael's sort of highlighting now with those 3 new triplexes are proposed, that is immediately, if you pull into the Lincoln Properties project, Lincoln Properties goes off to the right. Road A goes to the left. That is a very large outcropping of ledge. So it was not a valuable 2 acres of open space, if you will. It was non-contiguous based on the fact that we had a drainage basin at the end of it. So we basically chose this location for its least amount of value to open space. It's not part of the corridor of either of the 2 streams on the site. It's not near the town hall property. And we tucked it into an area that is on a slope and will be very similar to the units that Kevin developed on Crystal Springs, if you recall. He built into the hill those triplex units, so we're going to mirror that look along these three triplex additions. And again, it's low enough in elevation that will not see the development of Lincoln Properties. And what we did is we kept them on Road A, and in continuity for Road A having the triplexes, we didn't feel as if putting 3 new single family homes would fit in there. It would just sort of disturb the vibe, if you will, of Road A being the through road and the townhome road.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to misinterpret what you said or put words in you, but in essence, it was not the most desirable lot to begin with. Is that fair?
As far as open space goes, absolutely.
And for building as well, correct?
It's not ideal for sure.
And also what you've tried to do is, I can't think of a better word. I apologize for it. You've tried to somewhat hide them in the development.
No, we not hide. We put them on the road that has the townhomes.
Okay.
They're spaced out exactly the way the other homes are spaced out.
Yep.
So it'll be a natural fit when it's built out.
Okay,
Create sort of a cluster here.
all right.
So, Bill, this is Kevin. I think just to back up a little bit, if we go back a year and a half to almost 2 years, which is kind of scary, when we first went in front of all the boards and got everybody's support and went in front of town meeting, our original project, guys, was utilizing Mill Street. Obviously, through some great conversations, and as Brian said, the relationship that we have with the town and Jim and everybody that we've been working with, the whole thought about doing that common road was born. And, that's a huge cost to put that common road in.
Mm-hmm.
It made the most sense. There was no question. And I think Jim can vouch that as soon as, Jim and Don even brought it up, we all said, wow, yeah, that really makes sense for the town. So let's go for it. Then it morphed into, hey, the town has a major issue here with trying to deal with all of our stormwater up in this whole area of town. What can we do? And we stepped up and said, well, we think you guys have the land. We'll build that first detention pond. And then as Mark and Mike, relate to you guys, that pond was still only able to pick up about 30 or 35% of your 100% of your problem. So then with the conservation board, we found another piece of property that would work and we built another pond. So the long story short is I don't want it to look like I'm trying to, just keep adding units. It's just that the project has changed pretty significantly in the last 24 months. And we're just trying to make sure that we can keep the project doable and successful. So that's really the reason why we're trying to pick up those 9.
I don't want to infer that I think you're trying to find spots. You've lost some
Yeah.
land and you want to balance.
Okay.
From a practical standpoint, to me, it makes sense. I'll let I'm just one person. But I don't see a huge problem with it because we'll blend it with the neighborhood.
Yep.
I appreciate the fact you've tried to minimize the exposure, that they would be looking at the warehouse and building into the hill. I appreciate that. And I know we've had an excellent working relationship with you so far. I want to thank
It's been great.
Bill, could I ask you a question? I have a big mouth.
Of course.
Thank you. So Kevin, everything you said is true. And like I said before, I appreciate the efforts that you're going through. So you're losing, the redesign is losing 3 single family homes and they're being replaced with 9 units. Is it possible to put 3 single family homes there? I know that the economics would suggest that, the triplexes are more lucrative. And I understand that, but is it conceivable to put single family homes there? And then sort of a second question is, can that location be the area of the passive open space?
I can take one of those 2 questions. The passive open space wouldn't work there very well at all, just due to the slope, unless you have mountain climbers that want to traverse the area. But the single family homes, Brian, I think I mentioned, to me would stick out like a sore thumb, that just wouldn't have any continuity with the overall development of the project. Road A has always been the townhome road, and then the subdivisions, roads B, C, and D have the single family feel. I just think that those 3 single-family homes would sort of stick out and they sort of be non-uniform, if you will.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I jump in?
I'm just gonna ask you, Phil, what's your feelings?
Well, losing the park area, to me is not a positive. Is there a spot in the overall site, the drawing you had up just before this, there might be some opportunity to put that type of a park somewhere in here. I think that adds a lot of character to this area. It's anticipating this being a great community. Losing that little park, kind of takes away a little bit. The townhouses there, if we could work both of those 2 issues, I guess I'd like to see if we can put the park back in and keep, work with the 9 townhouses, if we could do both. I don't know if that's possible or not, but.
Just a thought, Michael. Michael, could you pull up the plan that may have that entrance again from Road 8 near the sewer pump station with the new cul-de-sac at the end of Mill Street? The town has a lot of land, between Town Hall and the beginning of this project. So, and a lot flatter, easier land to develop. So, if there's a possible placeholder, if you will, you do have quite a bit of land behind Town Hall.
Are you talking about the area of the basins, Mark?
Yeah, I thought you had one, the overall street tree sidewalk.
Yep. I'll get it from my desktop. Hold on.
Yeah. Right in there. See the new cul-de-sac we're putting in there? Yep. So the town has also asked Kevin to sort of put a paved cul-de-sac at the end of Mill Street for the trucks that utilize Mill Street for the industrial commercial uses down there. That is a much flatter area. Again, it does have its environmental concerns down there. So, just food for thought for the future, for future town planning. I think to Jim's point, and I think to Bill's point, there may be other spots in town that may need a refresher than there would more inventory for town land and town parks to operate and maintain.
Yeah,
And just to address Phil's comment or question a little bit more in terms of trying to relocate that park on the site. The challenge with that is, as I explained earlier, the reason we moved that basin is because of the conflict with the resource areas and their buffer zones. The buffer zones are not shown in entirety here, but these are vernal pools. They have buffer zones. This is a vernal pool with buffer zones. Clearly, this is a wetland and the perennial stream. My point is, just about everywhere else on this site where we come into conflict with the resource areas in their respective buffer zones. So to locate that park anywhere else on the site, we would just be going back to the commission and asking them to, take the impact from one place and move it to another. So I certainly understand why the question is being asked, but we really don't have ample opportunity on the Red Mill site to relocate that park.
Yeah, one thing I've been tossing around as I sit through conservation and listening to the applicant's presentations is, maybe this location isn't ideal for added recreation, and I think Bill's comment of potentially a donation to improved recreation elsewhere in town might be money better spent. One opportunity I do see here maybe is working with conservation and doing some maybe like education hiking or a small hiking trail along this corridor here. Perhaps we're going to have multiple locations where there's drainage basins, and those will have maintenance roads. We could certainly add a trailhead of some kind to a certain area. Maybe Mark and Michael, as you guys know this site better than anybody, maybe next time you might have a location in mind that we could maybe put just some signage in a trailhead in a certain location there.
Yep.
I like that a lot.
Yep, we could work with that.
Mark, what do you think about that? You know me, I love doing the trails for the project, so I just don't, I mean, do you think that that's realistic and that that's not something that's gonna send Cliff and his team off the cliff?
That's why I was recommending maybe just some signage, and I'll take care of the trails.
Because I mean, I think that's, you know, I think it's a really cool idea. It's kind of funny, guys, because we've spent so much time now on this property that it's like any property I develop. The longer you're there, the more the kind of concept of the project comes to you. And it is interesting that this project probably really does lend itself to more of a nature type of environment. Would you say, Michael and Mark?
I would agree with that.
I would
Yeah,
agree.
It
You
doesn't.
know,
lend
I
itself
know
to-
I know Bill's been, wants to see that green plan, which I wish we had. It's really unbelievable that, you do see that there's a fair amount of resource areas here, but what's so great about it is that they have so much protection around them that's actually what's making it, when you see that other plan, how much greenery there actually is going to be when we're just building in the old sandpit areas. It's pretty cool. It would be awesome if we could somehow do some sort of a marked loop trail. But like I said, I don't. If Jim's willing to take that one on, I'm all for it.
Jim will make it happen.
See if you can negotiate our park for a trail with the other commission, sir.
The trails themselves would be minimally intrusive to the resource areas. We wouldn't be talking about, any grading or anything like that. It would just be utilizing the current grade and maybe some minor pruning here and there and some
With some
signage.
signage, like Jim said.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could even, Jim, would it make sense to even incorporate some of the sidewalk into that trail so that you could somehow put together a neat loop?
Yeah, potentially. I think, anything you guys know the site better than anyone. So anything you guys can think of to show the board, I think that could be beneficial.
I think that would add some character to the development as well.
Yeah, me too.
So I think the next thing to do is you've given us a lot of information this evening. I think we have some homework to do with Jim in regards to the walking trails. Liz, what is your feeling on the triplexes?
So I obviously understand all the economics behind it and the reasoning. My personal opinion is I would rather have something that is, fits in with the other parts of the development than, anything else. So I'm not that opposed to it. I think it's fine to have that more cohesive look. So that's my opinion.
Dennis?
I don't have a problem with the triplexes. And I don't have a problem with them swapping out and maybe upgrading some of the other rec areas in town.
In addition to
losing the one there. And then if you add the trails, that's the plus.
I'm going to try to get as much as I can. I'm not going to give up the walking trails yet. I think that's a great idea. We'll add character.
Yeah, exactly.
Brian, is that address some of your concerns?
Yeah, I think it does. I really do like the idea of those trails, and if that's exactly something that would make this neighborhood unique and really would be something I would imagine that the residents there would use quite a bit.
Phil?
I'm all for it.
Jim, what's the next step this evening?
Yeah, so obviously there's some, the applicant's got to update the plan set. One question, I guess, to the applicant is, I know you still need to submit for the earth removal permit I'm looking at the time frame here. Are you going to get it in for the April 1 meeting, which the deadline is March 10th?
That's what we're shooting for, Jim. Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so shortly thereafter, I guess the zoning board meeting. I'm sure the planning board could take up this further, which would be April 8th.
Yep, that makes sense to us.
I have one couple observations. Number one, can I assume the initial waiver request, number one, is no longer needed?
Actually, it's still needed, just in a modified form. We were previously asking for one detention basin slope to have it to be 2-to-1. We've eliminated the 2-to-1, but we still have 3-to-1 slopes, and the regulations call for 4-to-1 slopes.
And the peer review is recommending that you certainly may grant the waiver, just simply to condition for construction monitoring during those basin construction.
Okay. And then at some point, Jim, you need to change the language on the waiver?
Yes.
And at some point, we're gonna have a waiver number 6.
Actually,
Correct.
Jim, if you recall, I did submit a revised list of waivers dated February 12th.
Yep.
With the revised language.
Yeah, it will all get incorporated in a decision once we get to that point.
Can I ask a question about waiver 1? I was reading peer review, Frank's comments about the type of dirt that was used. Is that what going back to the 3-to-1 slopes? Is that still going to be an issue?
I believe his comment was relative to the 2-to-1 slope. He didn't, in my recollection, didn't have concerns about the 3-to-1 slope, which is very, very typical. We quite often grade basins at 3-to-1. 4-to-1 is extraordinary, actually.
Yeah, I remember him saying it was possible to do, but it would be concerning with the types of soils, and maybe we need to, next time Frank's around, maybe we talk about, is that something we need to do with conditioning, or leave it as an open question, at least. I don't know, Jim, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we certainly can have, Frank's going to be at the next meeting, but in between now and the next meeting, we can certainly just button that up. But to be honest with you, I don't think he's going to have too much concern with it, but I still think it holds true to have construction monitoring for those basins, just to give you guys some assurance.
Jim, can you outline a couple of potential agreements for the walking trails, and then discuss with Kevin addressing some of the recreation areas in town?
Certainly, I'll certainly work with the applicant between now and the next meeting.
And let the Dennis and the select board know what we're trying to do here.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one other thought on the walking trails. Jim, I don't know whether there's opportunity at all about cut-throughs, maybe through town property in that area, but maybe that's part of the conversation, or at least something to think about.
Yeah, I'll have to give it some thought.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, just a suggestion, if I could, Mike Dryden here. As we discussed earlier, the board has voted previously on 4 of the 6 waivers. So the only outstanding waivers are number 1 and 6. And if it's the pleasure of the board to vote on those this evening, so we can sort of check the box on those, I think that would be helpful.
Jim, I think we may need a little more time on this.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, we certainly, for the basin waiver, Frank can give some additional input to the board. I think you've got a sense from the board on waiver 6. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bill.
I think we do.
What was waiver 6 again?
Length of the,
Oh,
length
go
of
ahead,
the
Mark.
cul-de-sac, length of the dead-end street.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a substantial change in plans to go back and forth and back and forth. That's why I would ask the
Okay.
board for their straw poll, if you will, maybe not an official vote, but a straw poll is going to impact our final set of design plans, and whether or not we have to go back to the Concom and say, planning board didn't agree with
Then what I would like to do is, Jim, can you some language for waiver number 6?
Yeah, waiver number 6 is simply, I don't have the regulation in front of me, but it's subdivision regulation for no more than 12 units on a dead-end street.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to hold a straw vote for waiver number 6.
I think, Jim, Bill, we could probably just have a straw vote. You don't need a.
I'm sorry?
I don't think you need a formal motion, not to be procedural, but,
Brian, your feeling?
I have no problem with it.
Phil?
No, I get no problem with it.
Dennis?
I'm good with it.
Liz?
I am okay with that.
I'm fine with it as well.
Great, thank you.
So that will give you, some ability to deal with the Conservation Commission.
Absolutely.
Thank
It'll
you.
allow us to finalize our plans. Thank you.
Jim, anything else?
I think that's it for this evening. I would just simply request continuation to April 8th.
One thing, is there anyone in the public out there who has anything they want to add to next meeting?
Doesn't look like it.
I'll move to continue the public hearing until April 8th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And I'll jump at once. There's a motion to continue the public hearing to the next meeting. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, that motion passes unanimously. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I appreciate you working with the various boards in town, and most recently Conservation and our board. We appreciate what you're trying to do for the betterment of Bellingham. There's nothing unnoticed.
Thanks, Bill.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good evening, all.
Thank you.
Okay, good night, guys, and ladies.
Jim, do you want to bring us up to speed on the associate member process?
Yes, sure. So we actually have some interest. I see one member actually, or one interested person is here this evening. We have 2 interested applicants for the planning board associate member. And I would like, if the board is amenable to having them in on March 11th, right? Yes, March 11th for just a quick interview with the board. Thank you, Phil, for pointing out it slipped my mind the regulation for a joint vote. So my thought was we could have interviews on March 11th, and then we don't have to vote that evening, but you could maybe the next meeting provide a recommendation to the select board, and then the select board could have I believe they're planning on voting later on that month as well. And so, yeah, 2 interested individuals. It's great to have people interested and willing to serve.
And does Mr. Woods here want to add anything to what you said on Monday night?
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes,
Hey, how you doing, everybody?
doing fine.
Good. No, I don't really have anything to add. I mean, if anybody has any questions, you're free to ask. I just
Okay.
figured I would jump in and hop in on the planning board meeting tonight. So.
What I'd like to do is have you back on the 11th, and then we'll have some questions at that point in time. I think you got a flavor of how this board works. This person would be the associate member. Is free to speak on all items in front of the board, but Jim has limited voting power, correct?
Right, it would only vote on a special permit if there was a member that no longer could vote, and the chairman appoints you to. But to get your feet wet for the full-time position.
Yeah. There you go.
Russell, Robert, where do you live in town?
I live on Atlanta Avenue. It's right at the top of the hill on Payne Street. So I'm actually right on the Rhode Island border.
Okay.
You could probably throw a rock and hit Tribino.
My
Oh, yeah.
neighbor.
I
Yeah.
do that for fun.
Nice.
So if you live up there, you probably dealt with the truck traffic coming down that road, correct?
On Atlanta Ave?
No, on the main street.
Oh, on Payne Street? Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's quite a bit of traffic.
Okay.
I know Atlanta Ave is actually we get a lot of traffic on our street just because it's a cut through. A lot of people will use it to dodge the traffic light on Diamond Hill Road and Mendon
Okay.
Road. So
you're literally right on the Rhode Island border, aren't you?
yeah, actually, yes. So a small portion of the property that I live on is actually in Rhode Island. It's a small
Okay.
corner of it. So
Well, thank you very much.
thank you.
Minutes in front of us from the February 11th meeting. We all had a chance to review them.
Jim, Jim, sorry. Bill,
Bill,
can I make one comment on that?
of course.
In the section regarding 161 and 169 Maple Street, under the air quality section, I recall the applicant's attorney, the last sentence of that paragraph says, the attorney noted that they comply with the air quality, but there was also another statement, I believe, that she made that in essence, it is after all a mulch company, and that there is odor, and it's their operations. Through their operations, they endeavor to make it less offensive. So I would like to add that under that section.
I can add that. That's easy to add, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment.
So moved.
Second.
Do I have a second? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Robert, we look forward to seeing you at the meeting in March.
Same here. So
Before we adjourn,
Nothing further.
I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion is on the floor to adjourn. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Brian,
Good night, Bellingham.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.